The morning sun cast long shadows across the abandoned streets of Detroit as Marcus Thompson crouched behind the rusted remains of a city bus, his military-trained eyes scanning the desolate landscape that had once been America's heartland. 3 months had passed since the outbreak began, and the nation he had sworn to protect lay in ruins, overrun by the shambling hordes of the undead. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant moans of zombies and the occasional crash of debris falling from crumbling buildings. Marcus adjusted his tactical vest and checked his ammunition for the 3rd time that morning. Old habits died hard, even in a world where death itself had lost all meaning. The former Army Ranger had survived 2 tours in Afghanistan, but nothing had prepared him for the nightmare that America had become. The zombie plague had spread faster than wildfire, consuming entire cities in a matter of days. Government infrastructure had collapsed within weeks, leaving scattered pockets of survivors to fend for themselves in a hostile wasteland. 6 blocks away, Dr. Elena Rodriguez peered through the reinforced windows of her makeshift laboratory, housed in what used to be a veterinary clinic. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and exhaustion lined her face as she studied the latest batch of infected blood samples under her microscope. As one of the few CDC scientists who had managed to escape the initial chaos, Elena carried the weight of humanity's hope on her shoulders. She had been working tirelessly to understand the pathogen that had transformed millions of Americans into mindless killing machines. The virus, which the remaining government officials had dubbed Necro-1, defied everything Elena thought she knew about biology. It spread through bites and scratches, reanimating dead tissue within hours of infection. The infected retained basic motor functions but lost all higher brain activity, driven only by an insatiable hunger for living flesh. What made it even more terrifying was its apparent immunity to conventional treatments and its ability to survive in harsh environmental conditions. Meanwhile, in the ruins of a shopping mall in suburban Ohio, 17-year-old Jake Mitchell led a group of survivors through the debris-strewn corridors. Despite his youth, Jake had quickly proven himself to be invaluable in this new world. His quick thinking and natural survival instincts had saved his group countless times. Behind him followed a diverse band of survivors. Rebecca Walsh, a former telecommunications engineer who had managed to establish communication networks between survivor camps. Maria Santos, a community organizer who kept morale high during their darkest moments. And Grace Williams, a nurse whose medical skills had kept them all alive. Jake raised his hand, signaling the group to stop. His ears had picked up something the others had missed, the telltale shuffle of zombie feet echoing from the food court ahead. He counted at least a dozen infected individuals, their decaying forms wandering aimlessly between overturned tables and chairs. The group would need to find another route to reach the pharmacy they desperately needed to access. "We go through the department store," Jake whispered, pointing to an alternate path. "Stay low, stay quiet, and watch each other's backs." 50 miles to the north, Colonel James Harrison stood in the command center of what remained of the U.S. military's eastern operations, housed in a fortified underground bunker. Banks of monitors displayed maps dotted with red zones, areas completely overrun by the infected. The green zones, representing secure human settlements, were disturbingly few and far between. Harrison had been tasked with the seemingly impossible mission of coordinating resistance efforts across the former United States. "Sir, we're receiving reports from Sector 7, announced Tommy Chin, a young tech specialist whose expertise with drones and satellite communications had made him indispensable to the resistance effort. "The Atlanta safe zone has been compromised. They're requesting immediate evacuation assistance." Harrison's jaw tightened. Atlanta had been one of their largest secure settlements, home to nearly 10,000 survivors. If it had fallen, it meant the zombie hordes were not just maintaining their numbers. They were growing stronger and more organized. Recent reports suggested that some of the infected were displaying pack-like behavior, coordinating their attacks in ways that defied their supposed lack of intelligence. As night fell across the devastated landscape, each group of survivors settled into their respective shelters, unaware that their paths would soon converge in ways that would determine the fate of the human race. Marcus Thompson cleaned his weapons by candlelight, planning his next reconnaissance mission into the city's infected zones. Dr. Rodriguez continued her tireless research, believing that somewhere in the viral structure lay the key to humanity's salvation. Jake Mitchell and his companions secured their temporary camp, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and dangers. The zombie apocalypse had transformed America into an unrecognizable wasteland, but it had also revealed the incredible resilience and determination of the human spirit. Scattered across the country, ordinary people had become extraordinary heroes, each playing a crucial role in the fight for survival. As they prepared for the battles ahead, none of them could imagine that their individual struggles would soon unite them in humanity's greatest challenge: the mission to reclaim their nation from the army of the dead. The question that haunted every survivor's dreams remained unanswered. Could humanity rise from the ashes of civilization and rebuild, or would America forever remain a kingdom of the dead? The answer lay somewhere in the dangerous days ahead, where courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds of human connection would be tested against the relentless tide of the undead apocalypse. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the abandoned pharmacy as Jake Mitchell and his group found themselves surrounded by a pack of 12 zombies that had been lying dormant in the store's back office. Grace Williams pressed herself against the medicine cabinet, clutching her medical bag, while Maria Santos helped Rebecca Walsh climb onto the pharmacy counter to escape the grasping hands of the infected. The zombies moved with terrifying coordination, their milky eyes fixed on the living flesh before them, their decayed fingers reaching desperately through the air. Jake raised his modified crowbar, preparing to fight their way out, when the front windows of the pharmacy exploded inward. Marcus Thompson rolled through the opening with military precision, his assault rifle already firing controlled bursts into the zombie horde. His appearance was like an answer to prayer: tactical gear, confident movements, and the bearing of someone who had survived countless battles. Within 30 seconds, the immediate threat was neutralized, but the gunfire had attracted more infected from the surrounding area. "Move! Now!" Marcus shouted, grabbing Jake by the shoulder. "There's about 50 more heading this way, and they'll be here in 2 minutes." The group didn't hesitate. Rebecca gathered her communication equipment, while Grace stuffed essential medical supplies into her bag. Maria helped Tommy Chun secure his portable tech setup, and they all followed Marcus through a pre-planned escape route he had scouted earlier. His military training was evident in every movement. He knew exactly where to step, which corners to check, and how to move a group quickly through hostile territory. As they reached the relative safety of an underground parking garage 3 blocks away, Marcus finally allowed them to catch their breath. The former Army Ranger studied each member of the group, assessing their capabilities and condition. Despite their youth, Jake's leadership qualities were immediately apparent. Rebecca's communication gear suggested technical expertise, Grace's medical supplies indicated valuable healing skills, and Maria's calm demeanor showed she was experienced in keeping groups together under pressure. "You handled yourselves well back there," Marcus admitted, lowering his weapon. "Most civilian groups I've encountered wouldn't have lasted 10 seconds in that situation." Jake stepped forward, extending his hand. "Jake Mitchell, these are my people. We've been surviving together for 2 months now. We heard gunfire and screams coming from 6 blocks north. Is there someone else out there who needs help?" Marcus's expression darkened. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, CDC scientist, holed up in a veterinary clinic. Her radio went silent 12 hours ago, and I promised I'd check on her. She's been working on understanding this virus. Might be our only shot at finding some kind of solution. Rebecca immediately pulled out her portable radio scanner. I can try to reach her on emergency frequencies. If she's still alive and has power, she might respond to the right signal pattern. While Rebecca worked her technical magic, Marcus explained what he knew about the zombie outbreak. The initial spread had been faster than anyone anticipated, with major population centers falling within days. Military responses had been fragmented and largely ineffective. The infected seemed to retain some basic problem-solving abilities, allowing them to breach simple barricades and even coordinate attacks. The worst part, Marcus continued, is that they're not just random wanderers anymore. In the past week, I've observed them moving in larger groups, almost like they're being directed by something or someone. Tommy Chun looked up from his tablet, where he had been monitoring local surveillance cameras that were still operational. I've noticed that too. The movement patterns don't match typical crowd behavior. There's an underlying organization that doesn't make sense for brain-dead creatures. Rebecca's radio crackled to life. This is Dr. Elena Rodriguez requesting immediate assistance. My location has been compromised. I repeat, I need evacuation support. I have critical research data that must be preserved. The voice was strained but clear, coming from Elena's makeshift laboratory 6 blocks away. Through her radio scanner, Rebecca could hear the distinctive moans of zombies in the background, along with the sound of breaking glass and splintering wood. Marcus was already checking his ammunition. She won't last long with that many infected trying to get in. We need to move fast, but we also need a solid extraction plan. Jake studied the building layout on Tommy's tablet. The veterinary clinic has a rear exit that connects to a service alley. If we can create a distraction at the front entrance, we might be able to get her out through the back. I can rig up a noise maker using some of my equipment, Rebecca offered. Something loud enough to draw them away from the rear of the building. Grace opened her medical kit. If she's been trapped for 12 hours, she might be injured or dehydrated. I'll prepare supplies for immediate treatment. Marcus nodded approvingly. These civilians had quickly adapted to tactical thinking, showing the kind of resourcefulness that would be essential for long-term survival. Here's the plan. Jake and I approach from the rear. Rebecca sets up the distraction device 50 meters from the front entrance. Grace, Maria, and Tommy secure our escape route and be ready for immediate medical assistance. As they prepared for the rescue mission, Elena's voice came through the radio again. I'm transmitting my research data now on emergency frequency 445.7. If something happens to me, this information must reach any remaining government scientists. The virus is mutating faster than we initially believed. The group exchanged worried glances. If the scientist was already preparing to transmit her life's work, the situation was more desperate than they had imagined. But they had found each other in this wasteland for a reason, and each person brought skills that the others desperately needed. Marcus led them toward their first real mission as a team, knowing that success would mean gaining not just another survivor, but potentially the key to understanding and eventually defeating the zombie plague that had destroyed their nation. The rescue of Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been successful, but it came at a cost that none of them had anticipated. As their group huddled in an abandoned subway maintenance tunnel 15 feet below the city streets, Elena's revelations about her research sent chills through everyone present. The scientist sat hunched over her salvaged laptop, her hands trembling not from fear, but from exhaustion and the weight of what she had discovered in her months of isolation. The virus isn't just spreading randomly, Elena explained, her voice barely above a whisper in the echoing tunnel. It's evolving, adapting to overcome human resistance. The infected I studied 3 weeks ago were significantly different from the ones I examined yesterday. Their neural pathways are reorganizing, creating new connections that shouldn't be possible in dead tissue. Marcus cleaned his rifle methodically while listening, his military mind already processing the tactical implications. Are you saying they're getting smarter? Not smarter in the traditional sense, Elena replied, pulling up data charts on her screen. But more coordinated, more purposeful. It's as if the virus is learning from each encounter with living humans and sharing that information across the infected population through some kind of biological network. Tommy-chan looked up from his array of electronic equipment, which he had managed to expand significantly since joining the group. His technical skills had proven invaluable in establishing communication links and monitoring zombie movement patterns through the city's remaining surveillance systems. That would explain the coordination patterns I've been tracking. Look at this. He turned his tablet toward the group, displaying a map of the city overlaid with movement data collected from dozens of security cameras. Red dots representing zombie locations showed clear patterns of organized search behavior, with groups systematically sweeping through neighborhoods in ways that suggested planning and communication. They're not just wandering, Tommy continued. They're conducting methodical searches of areas where survivors might be hiding. Yesterday, I watched a group of 30 infected individuals work together to breach a fortified grocery store. They used coordinated tactics, some creating distractions while others flanked around to attack weak points in the defenses. Rebecca Walsh had been monitoring radio frequencies throughout their conversation, her communication equipment picking up scattered transmissions from across the region. Suddenly, she held up her hand for silence as a strong signal came through on a military frequency. This is Colonel James Harrison, commanding officer of Eastern Resistance Operations, broadcasting from Secure Base Alpha. All surviving military personnel and civilian leadership groups, please respond on this frequency. We are coordinating nationwide resistance efforts and establishing supply networks between confirmed safe zones. Repeat, this is not a recording. We are actively coordinating survivor settlements across multiple states. The group exchanged amazed glances. They had assumed that government infrastructure had completely collapsed, leaving them to fend for themselves indefinitely. The possibility that organized military resistance still existed changed everything about their long-term survival prospects. Rebecca immediately began adjusting her equipment to respond. This is Survivor Group 7, currently operating in the Detroit metropolitan area. We have 8 individuals including medical, scientific, and technical specialists, requesting information about nearest secure facilities and coordination protocols. The response was immediate. Survivor Group 7, this is Colonel Harrison. We've been tracking radio chatter from your area for the past week. Intelligence suggests you've been particularly effective at avoiding infected populations and conducting successful resource acquisition missions. We need groups with your capabilities for a larger operation. Jake felt a surge of pride mixed with apprehension. Their small group had indeed become remarkably effective at survival, but the idea of joining a larger military operation brought both opportunities and risks. What kind of operation are we talking about, Colonel? We've identified 17 secure settlements within a 300-mile radius of your position. Harrison's voice continued through the static. Each settlement has between 50 and 2,000 survivors, but they're isolated from each other. The infected populations between settlements are growing larger and more organized. We need to establish supply lines and communication networks before these settlements are overwhelmed individually. Maria Santos, who had been quietly listening while organizing their limited medical supplies, finally spoke up. How do we know this isn't a trap? We've survived this long by being careful about who we trust. It was Grace Williams who answered, her nursing experience having taught her to read people's voices for signs of deception or distress. He sounds genuine. Medical personnel are trained to detect stress patterns in vocal communication. This Colonel Harrison is tired, worried, but not desperate enough to lie. He's telling the truth about coordinating survivor groups. Elena had been running calculations on her laptop while listening to the conversation. If what he's saying is accurate, and there really are 17 settlements in our region, That could represent anywhere from 800 to 34,000 survivors total. That's enough people to potentially mount an effective counteroffensive against the infected populations, especially if we can share resources and coordinate our efforts. Marcus stood and walked to the tunnel entrance, peering through the darkness toward the surface. 3 months of individual survival had hardened him, but the possibility of rejoining organized military operations appealed to his training and instincts. "Colonel, what's your assessment of our chances? Can scattered survivor groups really reclaim territory from millions of infected?" "Honestly, it's our only shot," Harrison replied. "Intelligence indicates that infected populations are not just maintaining their numbers, they're growing. Every day we remain isolated and defensive, we lose more territory and more people. But if we can coordinate our efforts, share Elena's research about the virus, and establish secure zones that can actually expand rather than just survive, we might have a fighting chance." Tommy was already plotting routes on his tablet, identifying potential paths between known survivor settlements that might avoid the largest concentrations of infected. "I can establish communication relays between settlements using existing infrastructure. Give me 48 hours and the right equipment, and I can have most of these groups talking to each other in real time." As the group made plans to establish contact with Colonel Harrison's network, none of them realized that their decision to join the larger resistance effort would set in motion events that would determine whether humanity would reclaim America or lose it forever to the growing army of the evolved undead. 2 weeks had passed since their initial contact with Colonel Harrison's network, and the group had established themselves as a mobile reconnaissance unit, gathering intelligence about zombie populations between survivor settlements. What they discovered during their mission shattered every assumption they had made about the nature of their enemy. Elena Rodriguez sat in the back of their modified military transport vehicle, staring at blood samples that defied everything she thought she knew about biological science. "This shouldn't be possible," Elena muttered, adjusting her portable microscope for the 3rd time. The samples she had collected from recently killed zombies showed cellular structures that were actively rebuilding themselves, creating new neural pathways at an unprecedented rate. The virus isn't just preserving dead tissue anymore. It's enhancing it. Marcus Thompson drove the armored vehicle through the abandoned streets of what used to be suburban Cleveland, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. Behind him, Jake Mitchell monitored their surroundings through a network of cameras Tommy Chin had installed on the vehicle's exterior. The teenager had become their early warning system, his sharp eyes and quick reflexes having saved them from zombie ambushes multiple times. "Movement ahead," Jake announced quietly. 200 meters, near the shopping center. But something's different about this group. Through the vehicle's reinforced windows, they could see approximately 20 zombies moving through the parking lot. But these weren't the shambling, disorganized hordes they had grown accustomed to fighting. These infected moved with purpose, maintaining formation as they systematically searched every vehicle in the lot. More disturbing still, they moved with a fluidity and speed that seemed impossible for reanimated corpses. Tommy's electronic monitoring equipment began picking up unusual signals. "I'm detecting electromagnetic activity from their location. It's faint, but it's definitely coming from the infected group, not from any electronic devices in the area." Rebecca Walsh, who had been maintaining radio contact with other reconnaissance teams, suddenly went pale as reports came in from across the region. "Marcus, we're getting similar reports from teams 3 and 7. Zombies displaying enhanced coordination, increased speed, and what appears to be problem-solving behavior." The most disturbing report came from Maria Santos, who had been studying behavioral patterns through their recorded surveillance footage. "I've been analyzing movement data from the past month. The infected aren't just getting more organized. They're showing signs of tactical thinking. Yesterday, I watched a group deliberately sacrifice several of their number to create a breach in a settlement's defenses, while the majority flanked around to attack from an unexpected direction. Elena looked up from her microscope, her face grim with realization. I need to examine one of these enhanced specimens immediately. If my hypothesis is correct, we're not dealing with reanimated corpses anymore. We're dealing with something entirely new. Marcus pulled the vehicle into a concealed position behind an overturned semi-truck. What exactly are you thinking, Doc? The virus has been using the infected as a learning network, Elena explained, her scientific mind working through the horrifying implications. Every encounter with survivors, every successful attack, every failed attempt, it's all been data collection. The virus has been evolving not just to survive, but to optimize its hunting strategies. Grace Williams, their field medic, had been treating minor injuries sustained during their recent missions. She had noticed that bites from newer zombies seemed to cause infections that progressed faster than those from earlier encounters. Elena, the infection rates have accelerated. Survivors who get bitten now turn within 4 to 6 hours instead of the 8 to 12 hours we documented initially. Jake activated the vehicle's external cameras and zoomed in on the zombie group in the parking lot. What he saw made his blood run cold. They're communicating with each other. Look at this. On the screen, they could see the zombies using subtle gestures and positioning to coordinate their search pattern. One infected individual would point toward a specific area, and others would immediately move to investigate. When they found nothing, they would signal back, and the group would systematically move to the next search zone. This is beyond pack behavior, Marcus observed grimly. This is military-level tactical coordination. Tommy Chen's equipment suddenly erupted with activity as multiple alarms sounded simultaneously. We've got a problem. Major problem. I'm picking up similar electromagnetic signatures from multiple locations across the city. It's like they're all connected to some kind of network. Rebecca's radio crackled to life with urgent transmissions from Colonel Harrison's base. All reconnaissance teams return to base immediately. We've received reports of coordinated attacks on 3 separate settlements within the past 6 hours. The infected are no longer operating as random groups. Repeat, we are dealing with organized assault formations. Elena's worst fears were being confirmed by the minute. The virus has reached a critical evolutionary threshold. It's not just reanimating dead tissue anymore. It's creating enhanced biological weapons. Stronger, faster, smarter, and networked together through some form of biological communication system we don't understand. As they prepared to return to base with their disturbing findings, Jake spotted something that made everyone's situation exponentially worse. Through the camera feed, they watched as the zombie search party suddenly stopped their activities and turned in perfect unison toward their concealed position. Despite being hidden behind solid metal and having made no noise, the infected had somehow detected their presence. They know we're here, Jake whispered. The enhanced zombies began moving toward their position with frightening coordination, spreading out to surround the vehicle, while others took elevated positions to observe potential escape routes. These weren't mindless predators anymore. They were evolved hunters with intelligence, strategy, and the ability to adapt their tactics in real time. Marcus started the engine as quietly as possible. Everyone hold on. We're about to find out just how much these things have evolved. As they drove away from the approaching threat, Elena continued studying her samples, knowing that humanity's survival now depended on understanding an enemy that was learning and adapting faster than they could develop countermeasures. The war for America had just entered a new phase, and the zombies were no longer just the walking dead. They had become something far more dangerous. The massive underground complex that Colonel Harrison had designated as Rally Point Alpha buzzed with activity unlike anything the survivors had seen since the outbreak began. Located in a repurposed subway station beneath downtown Pittsburgh, the facility housed over 3,000 survivors from dozens of settlements across the eastern United States. Marcus Thompson stood on an elevated platform overlooking the main assembly area, watching as people from all walks of life worked together with a shared purpose that filled him with hope he hadn't felt in months. Elena Rodriguez had established a proper laboratory in one of the station's side chambers, her equipment now supplemented by resources from other settlements that had managed to preserve scientific instruments. Around her, a team of 12 researchers from various backgrounds, veterinarians, chemists, biology teachers, and even a pharmaceutical technician, worked frantically to understand the evolved zombie threat and develop countermeasures. The electromagnetic signature patterns are consistent across all samples, Elena announced to her research team. The virus creates a biological communication network by generating weak electrical fields through modified neural tissue. But here's the breakthrough. The signal has a limited range and requires line-of-sight transmission for complex tactical coordination. Dr. Michael Barnes, a former university professor who had arrived with the Chicago Settlement Group, looked up from his analysis. So they're essentially using the infected as living radio transmitters? That explains the coordinated behavior, but it also suggests a vulnerability we can exploit. Jake Mitchell had thrown himself into training programs alongside hundreds of other civilians who were learning combat techniques, tactics, and survival skills from military personnel like Marcus. The teenager's natural leadership abilities had caught the attention of Colonel Harrison, who had assigned him to help coordinate civilian defense units. The key is thinking like them, Jake explained to a group of 20 new recruits, most of whom were adults twice his age. These enhanced zombies plan their attacks, but they still rely on predictable hunting patterns. If we can disrupt their communication network and force them to act independently, they become much more manageable. Across the facility, Tommy Chun had established what could only be described as a technological command center. Using equipment salvaged from multiple settlements, he had created a communication network that connected over 40 survivor groups across 6 states. His screens displayed real-time intelligence about zombie movements, weather patterns, resource availability, and strategic opportunities. Colonel Harrison, we're receiving confirmed reports of successful defensive actions from 7 settlements this week, Tommy reported during the daily briefing. The enhanced zombies are powerful, but they're still vulnerable to coordinated human tactics when we know they're coming. Rebecca Walsh worked alongside Tommy, her expertise in communications having proven invaluable in coordinating supply runs and evacuation operations. She had established secure radio protocols that allowed settlements to request assistance and share intelligence without revealing their locations to potential threats. The Jacksonville settlement reports they've successfully implemented Elena's electromagnetic disruption technique, Rebecca announced. They used modified radio jammers to interrupt zombie coordination during an attack. The infected reverted to individual behavior patterns and were repelled with minimal casualties. Colonel Harrison stood before the assembled crowd in the main chamber, his presence commanding attention from thousands of survivors who had gathered from across the region. Military personnel stood alongside teachers, mechanics, doctors, and families with children, all united by their determination to reclaim their homeland. 3 months ago, we were scattered survivors hiding in the ruins of our civilization, Harrison began, his voice amplified throughout the complex. Today, we represent the largest organized resistance effort since the outbreak began. We have scientists developing weapons against the infected, technicians coordinating our operations, and trained fighters ready to take back our communities. Maria Santos had emerged as one of the settlement's most effective organizers, coordinating food distribution, medical care, and morale-building activities. Her ability to keep people hopeful and focused had made her indispensable to the overall effort. She had organized teams of volunteers who maintained the facility, cared for children, and supported the families of those engaged in combat operations. We're not just surviving anymore, Maria addressed her volunteer coordinators. We're building something new. Every person here has skills and knowledge that contribute to our collective strength. Teachers are training the next generation, mechanics are maintaining our equipment, and families are preserving the hope that makes all of this worthwhile. Grace Williams had established a medical training program that was producing field medics at an unprecedented rate. Her experience treating zombie bite victims had led to the development of treatment protocols that could slow infection progression and, in some cases, prevent full transformation if administered quickly enough. The new antiviral compound Elena developed won't cure established infections, but it can buy us time, Grace explained to her medical trainees. Administered within the first hour after exposure, it can extend the transformation period from 6 hours to up to 18 hours. That's enough time to evacuate wounded personnel and potentially develop more advanced treatments. As night fell over the complex, Elena made an announcement that would change everything about their upcoming operations. Standing before the assembled leadership, she held up a small device that looked like a modified radio transmitter. I call it the neural disruptor. It generates electromagnetic interference specifically tuned to disrupt the zombie communication network. Field tests suggest it can create a zone of confusion approximately 500 meters in diameter, forcing enhanced zombies to revert to basic hunting behaviors. Colonel Harrison immediately grasped the tactical implications. How many can you produce? With our current resources and the team we've assembled, we can manufacture 50 units within 2 weeks. That's enough to equip major assault teams for coordinated operations against infected strongholds. Jake stepped forward, his young face serious with determination. Colonel, if we can disrupt their coordination and we have trained teams ready for combat operations, when do we stop being defenders and start being liberators? Harrison looked around at the faces of the survivors who had transformed from desperate refugees into organized resistance fighters. The question isn't when, Jake. The question is where do we hit them first? The Great Gathering had accomplished something none of them had dared hope for when they were scattered and isolated. They had become an army capable of fighting back against the evolved zombie threat and beginning the long process of reclaiming America. The abandoned city of Akron, Ohio stretched before them in the pre-dawn darkness, its skeletal skyline silhouetted against storm clouds that perfectly matched the ominous nature of their mission. Marcus Thompson crouched behind the twisted remains of a highway overpass, studying the zombie-controlled urban center through high-powered binoculars. After weeks of planning and preparation, the Resistance was about to launch their first major offensive operation against an infected stronghold. Target confirmation. Marcus spoke quietly into his radio headset. We have visual on the primary nest structure. Former City Hall building. Approximately 2,000 infected in the immediate vicinity. They're maintaining patrol patterns around a 3-block perimeter. 3 miles away, Elena Rodriguez monitored the operation from a mobile command vehicle equipped with her latest technological breakthrough. The neural disruptor array had been refined and expanded, now capable of creating coordinated interference zones that could disable zombie communication networks across an entire urban district. Her hands moved steadily across the control interface, preparing to deploy the electromagnetic pulse that would turn the tide of battle. All teams, this is command. Colonel Harrison's voice came through the communication network that Tommy Chun had established. Operation Daybreak is authorized. Elena, initiate neural disruption in 3, 2, 1, execute. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Across the city, enhanced zombies that had been moving in coordinated formations suddenly stopped, their synchronized movements dissolving into confused individual wandering. The electromagnetic interference had severed their biological communication network, reducing highly organized predators back to shambling corpses driven only by basic hunger instincts. Jake Mitchell led the first assault team through the eastern approach. His unit comprised of 20 survivors who had trained extensively in urban combat techniques. Despite his youth, his tactical instincts and natural leadership had earned him the respect of seasoned fighters twice his age. Behind him, Grace Williams and her medical team waited in armored vehicles, ready to provide immediate treatment for any casualties. East team moving in. Jake reported as his unit advanced through abandoned streets littered with the debris of civilization. Confirmed neural disruption effectiveness. Individual zombies showing standard slow movement patterns. No signs of coordinated resistance. The Western Assault Team, led by Marcus Thompson, encountered their first significant challenge as they approached the City Hall complex. Hundreds of infected individuals had been concentrated in the area around the building, creating a massive obstacle that would normally require overwhelming firepower to overcome. However, without their enhanced coordination abilities, the zombies posed a much more manageable threat. "Rebecca, I need communication blackout on all civilian frequencies," Marcus requested as his team prepared to engage. "We don't want panic reports reaching other settlements before we can confirm operation success." Rebecca Walsh, operating from the command vehicle alongside Elena, efficiently managed information flow to ensure that other resistance settlements received accurate updates without premature alarm. Her communication expertise had become crucial for maintaining morale and preventing false information from spreading through the survivor network. "All frequencies secured," Rebecca confirmed. "Tommy has drone surveillance providing real-time battlefield assessment. Maria's logistics teams are standing by for immediate resupply if needed." The assault teams moved through the city with precision that would have been impossible during the chaotic early months of the outbreak. Maria Santos had coordinated supply lines that ensured every fighter had adequate ammunition, medical supplies, and emergency rations. Her organizational skills had transformed desperate scavenging operations into efficient military logistics. Tommy Chun piloted surveillance drones from his mobile command station, providing overhead intelligence that allowed assault teams to avoid large concentrations of infected while identifying priority targets. His technological innovations had given the resistance capabilities that rivaled pre-outbreak military operations. "Drone reconnaissance confirms the primary nest location," Tommy reported. "City Hall basement levels show significant zombie concentration, estimated 300 infected in underground areas, likely including enhancement specimens that need to be eliminated to prevent re-establishment of communication networks." Elena monitored the neural disruption field strength, making real-time adjustments to maintain maximum effectiveness. Her scientific breakthrough had provided the resistance with their first genuine advantage over the evolved zombie threat, but maintaining the disruption field required constant technical supervision. Neural disruption holding steady at 97% effectiveness, Elena announced. "Field generators are performing within acceptable parameters. We have approximately 4 hours of continuous operation before requiring recharge cycle." Grace Williams and her medical teams moved through secured areas, treating wounded fighters and ensuring that anyone exposed to zombie bites received immediate antiviral treatment. Her medical protocols had reduced infection rates among resistance fighters to less than 5%, a remarkable improvement over the near-certain death sentences that zombie encounters had represented months earlier. The breakthrough came when Jake's team discovered the source of the enhanced zombie coordination in the basement levels of City Hall, a complex organic structure, resembling a massive brain connected to dozens of infected individuals through biological cables, pulsed with electromagnetic energy. This was the central processing unit that had been coordinating zombie activities across the entire region. "Command, this is Jake. We've found something incredible down here. It's like a biological computer system made from infected tissue. The enhanced zombies have been building some kind of central intelligence network." Marcus's team reached the basement simultaneously, providing additional firepower for what would prove to be the most critical moment of the operation. The destruction of the organic command center required precise coordination to prevent triggering defensive responses from the connected infected individuals. Elena, "We need maximum neural disruption focused on our current position," Marcus requested. "We're about to take out their central processing unit." The coordinated assault on the organic command structure succeeded beyond their most optimistic projections. As the biological network was destroyed, infected individuals throughout the city began showing signs of disorientation and decreased aggression. Some zombies simply collapsed, while others wandered aimlessly without any apparent purpose or direction. Operation Daybreak complete, Colonel Harrison announced as reports of success came in from all assault teams. "Akron is secured. We've successfully liberated our first city and proven that coordinated human resistance can defeat even enhanced zombie strongholds." The victory at Akron represented more than just a military success. It was proof that humanity could fight back and win against seemingly impossible odds. The success at Akron had been just the beginning. Over the following month, the resistance had liberated 12 smaller cities and towns, but now they faced their ultimate challenge: the massive zombie strongholds of Chicago, Detroit, and Philadelphia. Intelligence gathered from destroyed command centers revealed that these three cities contained the primary biological processing facilities that coordinated zombie activities across the entire eastern United States. Colonel Harrison stood before a war council comprising the resistance's most experienced leaders, knowing that the next 72 hours would determine whether humanity could truly reclaim America. "Satellite imagery confirms our worst fears," Tommychin announced, his multiple screens displaying reconnaissance data that painted a grim picture. Each target city contains not just one central command structure, but entire networks of biological facilities. Chicago alone has 17 confirmed processing centers connected by underground tunnel systems that span 40 city blocks. Elena Rodriguez had spent sleepless weeks developing new versions of her neural disruptor technology, but the scale of the final targets demanded innovations that pushed her equipment to its absolute limits. Her latest creation, dubbed the Network Collapse Generator, could theoretically shut down biological communication systems across an entire metropolitan area, but it had never been tested on such a massive scale. "The power requirements are enormous," Elena explained to the assembled commanders. "We'll need portable fusion generators positioned at 12 specific locations around each target city. Once activated, we'll have exactly 6 hours before the generators overheat and shut down permanently. After that, we're committed to conventional warfare against millions of infected." Marcus Thompson studied detailed tactical maps that showed the true scope of their challenge. Chicago's zombie population was estimated at over 2 million infected individuals, including thousands of enhanced variants that had been produced by the city's biological processing facilities. The military precision required for simultaneous assaults on 3 major urban centers would test every skill the resistance had developed. "We're dividing our forces into 3 primary strike groups," Marcus explained to the assembled team leaders. "Each group will have approximately 800 fighters, supported by Elena's disruption technology and coordinated through Tommy's communication networks. Success depends on eliminating all biological command centers within the 6-hour window." Jake Mitchell had been promoted to commanding one of the 3 strike forces, despite being barely 18 years old. His tactical brilliance and natural leadership had been proven in numerous smaller operations, and his ability to inspire civilian fighters made him invaluable for the massive undertaking ahead. He would lead the assault on Detroit, the city where their group had first formed during those desperate early days. "Detroit has personal meaning for all of us," Jake addressed his strike force during the final briefing. "It's where we learned to survive, where we discovered we could fight back, and where we proved that ordinary people could become extraordinary when fighting for something greater than themselves." Grace Williams had organized the largest field hospital operation in the Resistance's history, positioning medical teams at strategic locations around all 3 target cities. Her antiviral treatments had evolved to the point where even severe zombie bite victims had a 70% survival rate if treated within the first 2 hours. Her preparations would be crucial for saving lives during the intense urban warfare ahead. Every fighter carries emergency medical supplies, Grace announced during the medical briefing. We've distributed over 3,000 doses of improved antiviral medication. Remember, speed saves lives. Get the wounded to treatment centers immediately, and don't attempt field surgery under fire. Rebecca Walsh had coordinated the most complex communication operation in post-outbreak history, establishing secure channels between dozens of assault teams while maintaining contact with remaining survivor settlements across the continent. Her networks would allow real-time coordination between strike forces separated by hundreds of miles. Communication discipline is essential, Rebecca emphasized during final preparations. We're managing information flow for over 2,000 active fighters across 3 simultaneous operations. Clear, brief reports only. Extended conversations could compromise operations in other cities. Maria Santos had somehow managed to supply the massive operation with everything from ammunition to food rations, coordinating logistics that would have challenged pre-outbreak military organizations. Her teams had positioned supply caches throughout the approach routes to all 3 cities, ensuring that assault forces could maintain operations even if primary supply lines were compromised. The assault began at precisely 6 a.m. Eastern Time, with Elena's network collapse generators activating simultaneously across all 3 target cities. The effect was even more dramatic than her most optimistic projections. Millions of infected individuals suddenly lost their enhanced coordination abilities, creating chaos within the zombie ranks that the resistance forces exploited with devastating effectiveness. Jake's forces advanced through Detroit's abandoned streets, systematically destroying biological command centers, while Tommy's drones provided real-time intelligence about zombie movements. The sight of his hometown slowly being liberated filled Jake with emotions he had thought lost forever during those dark, early months of survival. In Chicago, Marcus led urban warfare operations that cleared entire city blocks, his military experience proving invaluable for coordinating attacks on fortified zombie positions. Each destroyed command center weakened the remaining biological network, creating cascading effects that disrupted zombie coordination throughout the metropolitan area. Elena monitored her generators from a mobile command center, making constant adjustments to maintain network disruption while her equipment operated far beyond design specifications. Warning alarms indicated that several generators were approaching critical overload, but she pushed the systems to their absolute limits, knowing that humanity's future depended on those crucial 6 hours. 5 hours, 43 minutes remaining, Elena announced as her equipment registered dangerous temperature spikes. Generator 3 in Chicago is approaching failure threshold. All teams accelerate demolition schedules for remaining targets. Grace's medical teams worked frantically to treat casualties from the intense urban combat, her improved antiviral treatments saving lives that would have been lost during earlier operations. The Resistance had become a professional military organization capable of complex operations while maintaining the human compassion that made their fight worthwhile. As the 6-hour deadline approached, Tommy reported the destruction of the final biological command center in Philadelphia. The zombie communication network that had coordinated millions of infected across the eastern United States was completely eliminated, reducing the enhanced threat back to individual zombies that could be handled through conventional resistance methods. Network collapse confirmed across all target cities, Colonel Harrison announced. The zombie coordination system has been permanently destroyed. We've broken their ability to organize large-scale operations. 6 months after the destruction of the zombie communication networks, the transformed landscape of America told a story of remarkable human resilience and determination. From the observation deck of the newly constructed Freedom Tower in downtown Detroit, Jake Mitchell looked out over a city that had risen from the ashes of apocalypse to become a symbol of humanity's triumph over seemingly impossible odds. Construction crews worked around the clock to rebuild infrastructure, while children played in parks that had been zombie-infested wastelands less than a year ago. Elena Rodriguez stood in her expanded laboratory facility, now the centerpiece of the National Disease Control and Prevention Institute, examining the final test results of her revolutionary cure. After months of refinement following the successful network destruction, she had achieved what once seemed impossible: a treatment that could reverse zombie infection even in advanced stages, restoring brain function and returning the infected to full humanity. The neurological regeneration process is complete, Elena announced to her research team, which now included dozens of scientists from around the world who had emerged from hidden research facilities. Patient 2847 shows full cognitive restoration and no residual viral traces. We've successfully treated over 15,000 individuals with a 93% success rate. The cure had changed everything about post-apocalypse America. Families separated by infection were reunited as loved ones returned from the nightmare of zombie existence. Former infected individuals, their memories intact but bearing the psychological trauma of their experiences, became powerful advocates for continued research and preparation against future biological threats. Marcus Thompson had transitioned from combat leader to Commissioner of National Security, overseeing the integration of military units with civilian law enforcement to create a new model of community protection. His office walls were lined with photographs of restored cities and commendations from grateful communities. But his proudest achievement was the National Youth Leadership Academy that Jake had established. The next generation of Americans will be prepared for anything, Marcus explained to visiting international delegations who came to study America's recovery model. They'll have survival skills, scientific education, and most importantly, an understanding that individual strength comes from community cooperation. Colonel Harrison had been elected as the first president of the restored American Republic, leading a government that combined the best elements of pre-outbreak democracy with hard-learned lessons about crisis management and community resilience. His inaugural address, delivered from the steps of the rebuilt Capitol building, had become an inspiration for recovery movements worldwide. Tommy Chen's technological innovations had revolutionized not just zombie defense, but civilian infrastructure as well. His communication networks had evolved into a national information system that connected every community, ensuring that knowledge, resources, and assistance could be shared instantly across the continent. His latest project involved satellite systems that monitored global biological threats, providing early warning capabilities that could prevent future pandemics. "We're not just rebuilding what we lost," Tommy explained during a technology conference attended by representatives from 43 nations. "We're building something better. Our communication networks, medical systems, and community organizations are more resilient and more effective than anything that existed before the outbreak." Rebecca Walsh had become Director of National Communications, overseeing information systems that connected restored American communities with survivor settlements around the world. Her networks facilitated the sharing of Elena's cure with international medical organizations, helping other nations combat their own zombie populations while building global cooperation unprecedented in human history. Grace Williams had established the National Medical Corps, training a new generation of healthcare professionals who combine traditional medical knowledge with specialized expertise in biological threat response. Her field hospitals had evolved into permanent medical centers that served as models for healthcare delivery in post-crisis societies. "Every community has access to advanced medical care," Grace reported during the annual National Recovery Conference. "Our mobile medical units can reach any location within 4 hours, and our treatment protocols have reduced infection mortality rates to less than 2%. Maria Santos had been elected mayor of Detroit, leading the city's transformation from zombie wasteland to thriving metropolis that attracted residents from around the world. Her community organization principles had been adopted by dozens of other restored cities, creating a new model of civic engagement that emphasized both individual responsibility and collective support. The children born in post-outbreak America grew up with a unique perspective on life's value and community importance. They attended schools that taught not just traditional subjects, but also survival skills, scientific inquiry, and cooperative problem-solving. These young Americans would inherit a nation that had proven itself capable of overcoming any challenge through unity and determination. International observers marveled at America's recovery, which had progressed faster and more completely than anyone had thought possible. The zombie apocalypse had initially seemed like civilization's end, but it had ultimately become the catalyst for creating a stronger, more unified, and more prepared society. Elena's research had expanded beyond treating zombie infections to developing preventive measures against future biological threats. Her institute maintained genetic libraries of all known pathogens while continuously developing new treatments and vaccines. The nightmare of the zombie outbreak would never be repeated because humanity had learned to prepare for the unthinkable. As evening fell over the restored nation, Jake stood once again on the Freedom Tower's observation deck, now accompanied by his wife Sarah, a former refugee who had become a prominent architect in Detroit's reconstruction. Their young daughter played nearby, growing up in a world where the zombie apocalypse was already becoming historical memory rather than lived trauma. "Do you think they'll understand what we went through?" Sarah asked, watching their daughter play with toys that included both dolls and emergency survival kits. A reminder that preparation and normalcy could coexist. "They'll understand that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they work together," Jake replied, remembering the desperate survivors who had become the architects of America's rebirth. "They'll know that no challenge is too great when people refuse to give up on each other." The restored United States of America stood as proof that even the darkest chapters in human history could lead to brighter futures. The zombie apocalypse had ended not with humanity's extinction, but with the creation of a stronger, wiser, and more united civilization that would serve as an inspiration for generations to come.